Okay, folks, it's time for our favorite podcast, Cut to the Chase. And as promised, I have brought Ruth Rizkalla back to discuss another critical topic in the world of mass torts, social media. Ruth, how are you doing?
I'm good. How you doing, Greg?
I'm outstanding. Thank you for asking. Ruth is a partner at Carlson Law Firm, Los Angeles. And Ruth, unbelievably, has like 2 decades of experience. She's been on many, many leadership and committees in lots of the mass torts that we've talked about. 3M, Xaralta, Pradex, Elmeron, Paragard, Zoloft. And before the show, I actually watched, Ruth has a very interesting little bio, and I found out that Ruth is the youngest of 6 children, and unbelievably, she was bullied by her siblings.
Wow, Greg, you didn't tell me you were going to do background research on me prior to this. The next
So
time we're on, I'm going to dig up some stuff on you too.
you go, girl, you go, girl. So, okay, so you learned, you had that experience as someone that was bullied. And the reason I say that to everybody out there is because Ruth is an outstanding litigator. And, if you have children that are affected by the topic that we're going to talk about and you want to fight her, you like to have somebody that was bullied. They know sort of how to, handle themselves, and they develop that sort of fighting mentality, which you have, Ruth. I know you have it. Do you have it? Of course.
Absolutely. You've got to have it in order to do what we do.
Yeah. And everybody, I would imagine that people listening to this right now are probably looking on their phone and they can't even multitasking. They're looking at their social media and their TikTok and their Instagram and their Facebook, and they're getting upset because they don't have any likes and nobody likes them. And what am I going to do? And it's a tragedy for a lot of people. A lot of people's lives are completely upended by what I consider to be nonsense, and I mean, it's a great thing, social media, but it's also not such a great thing. And so that's why I brought you onto the show, because you are handling some of the major social media litigation right now. So I'd like you to talk about that.
Sure. Where do you want me to start, Greg? I can go on for hours and hours and hours. Do you have specific questions, or do you want me to just talk? Because
No, no,
I can do both.
you could do both. All right. Well, I got both. My specific question is, tell us about the case that you're handling.
Sure. Okay. So right now with the social media cases, we have a multi-district litigation, and we also have a JCCP, which is a Judicial Council coordinated proceeding. So the JCCP is in California State Court in front of Judge Poole, coordinated there. And then we also have the MDL, which is in front of Judge Gonzalez Rogers. So that's where it is. Those are the two big locations. If you're going to file your cases, there are direct filing orders in both of those cases. So that's kind of just like the procedural map of it all. But what is the case about? So the case itself, and I thought about this, and I've been thinking about this when people ask me why now? What are these cases about? What's the big deal? Social media has been around forever. Well, the big deal is this. I think only now, and when I say now, I would say, for us, the end users, the adults, the grown-ups who are supposed to be watching our kids and making sure they're safe, it's really only now that we're starting to catch wind of the damage and the harm that social media causes. And these cases are not about social media's effects on adults. In fact, our case is really about minors who are, going into Facebook or Instagram or Snapchat, and, they're not even supposed to be there without parental consent. But as we know, they jump on, they put in a date of birth. I mean, they're not stupid. They know how to do math. They know if they put in a certain date of birth, they can gain access. So now we've got these minors who are on social media platforms, and it's absolutely lawless. They can find anything, they can do anything. And not only that, there are lots of different components. They get on, they're watching harmful material. Like, for instance, They can pull up, information on suicide, or their challenges like the blackout challenge, or I killed myself challenge. That's an actual challenge where you pretend like you kill yourself and then you record your family and how they react to you dying. So there are things like that. But then there are also, even more basic things like, you have a teenage girl, and this is kind of, I have a teenage girl, by the way, who's 14. And so this is kind of like a sensitive topic, I think, in the nation today. You have a teenage girl who logs in and then she clicks on, for instance, let's just dumb it down, a how to be skinny ad. She clicks on it once, guess what? All of a sudden, you've got these big defendants. You've got, Facebook, Insta, TikTok. They have these algorithms. They've got these, the best and the brightest product designers, engineers out there. You click on something once and they're like, let's throw out some more of the same. You continue to click on it, and we've all done this, right? You go down a rabbit hole. So what do you think happens when you've got a 14-year-old girl who's not even supposed to be on social media without, her parents' consent, right? And and as we just talked about it, it's not adequate. There's not adequate monitoring of minors going onto social media platforms. Okay, so back to this 14-year-old girl. She clicks on it, I want to be skinny ad. Guess what she's going to keep getting? She's going to get notifications. There's a new one, there's a new one, there's a new one. And because teenagers and children, because their prefrontal cortex is not developed, and that area of the brain controls executive functions, controls the ability to impulse control. She's seeing all this and she thinks, oh gosh, every time I'm on my phone, the computer, it's like everything's about being skinny. So what are we talking about then? We're talking about bulimia, anorexia, self-harm, suicidal thoughts, executed suicides, as a result of no one protecting minors and the material that's being shown to them on social media platforms. So that's kind of what our case is about, the core of it. And of course, I can almost anticipate your questions, Greg, but I don't know if you want to ask them or I could just keep talking.
Okay, no, so I'm going to play devil's advocate here. And I'm going to say, all right, you know what, listen. All right, so they're not supposed to be on, they're getting on. And then, they're, the 14-year-old wants to lose weight. So you're telling me that there's an algorithm that's going to see that she's interested in that. So now all of a sudden she's going to get flooded with weight loss products?
Well, not just products, but all kinds of different advertisements. So we have to remember, the reason social media, well, not the reason, how social media platforms make money is via advertising. So the longer this 14-year-old girl is on, and the more advertisements that she clicks on, right, or articles or whatever, that's how these social media platforms make money.
All right, so okay. So you have a company that wants to sell a product, and they've gotten wind that on social media, it's not like, okay, I'm just going to put a banner up and right outside of a junior high school because I know all these junior high students are going to walk by it or whatever. I mean, so the ad companies or these commercial enterprises, they know that social media is so effective at identifying the target audience through these algorithms that they get flooded, and the advertising just goes, hey, let's have a party, right? I mean, it's that sorted.
Yeah, it is. Okay, so I want to throw some stats at you just because, stats always kind of bring these somewhat lofty theories kind of down to earth. Okay, so in 2021, 90% of 13 to 17-year-olds said that they use social media apps. 49% of 10 to 12-year-olds also said that. And then, and this is the part that's a little surprising, 32% of 7 to 9-year-olds are using social media apps. Yeah, that's like a third. 7 to 9. I mean, do you remember what you were doing when you were 7? You're like first grade, kindergarten. I mean, we weren't on social media apps, that's for sure. So, so that is kind of a market. It is the market. And in fact, Instagram, let me take Instagram, for instance. Instagram, they've been quoted in the New York Times as saying that they don't want to lose the teen foothold in social media, because that means they would lose their pipeline for growth. Okay, that's verbatim, by the way. And Instagram also has been quoted as saying that, their global annual marketing budget is 13 to 15-year-olds, and that is their early high school marketing demographic. So, so they absolutely are targeting what we consider to be children, teenagers, and at minimum, minors, who aren't even supposed to be on these platforms without parental consent.
Okay, all right. So I'll tell you what, when I was 7, 8, 9 years old, first of all, I was looking for the wimpiest kid in my neighborhood to beat the living out of. No. But I mean, listen,
I wouldn't admit that. But okay.
No, but it was all fun. They loved it. Believe me, they loved it. It was a growing moment for them. Okay. And believe me, I was a small kid, so I had my share of just, yeah. All right. But, like I used to watch the Cookie Monster. My parents they knew I was watching the Cookie Monster, Sesame Street, and they had ads, and those ads were targeted to me, like, Three Musketeers and, whatever things that kids, right? So what was the problem with that? Was there any, is it any different?
It is absolutely different, and I'll tell you why. It's very easy for us, especially today. And I have a twofold answer for you. One thing I want to talk about is just, the decline in the last decade overall, for children and teenagers. I mean, we're talking about, for instance, oh gosh, let me try to remember. Like the suicide rate in the last decade has gone up 50%. That's the last decade. We look at, or actually it's 57% for teens. There's been a 40% increase in teens reporting that they are sad and that they are hopeless. So you've got things like that. And then you've got studies and surveys that will also link social media to, suicide rates, as well as, overall decline in mental health. Like there was a 2020 study that, that showed that children and adolescents who are addicted to Facebook are more likely to engage in self-harm and suicide. There's a 2020 clinical research paper that shows a link between media use and eating disorders. There's a 2023 study of MRIs, of 12-year-old brains that shows that they have lower neural sensitivity when it comes to social anticipation. So there's science that's linking the use of social media and what, a lot of people are calling just this decline in mental health with children and adolescents overall across the nation. And, to me, it's no coincidence that this has happened in the last decade.
Okay. So I want to try to put the entire spectrum together. The fact that a 14-year-old is flooded with weight loss, diet stuff, are you telling me that there's studies that are showing that that's creating depression or suicidal thoughts or suicide in itself? I mean, just that part of social media.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. And and part of the reason why is, I think, it's kind of our eggshell plaintiff, right? If you have someone who potentially is already susceptible to certain thoughts, and then you're flooding them, literally flooding them with images and articles of those exact thoughts, and you're doing it, as you know, with social media platforms, they're doing it for profit. They're absolutely aware that these folks, when I say folks, I mean like teenagers, we're talking about children even, these minors, that they are susceptible to these kinds of suggestions, and you continue to bombard them with those suggestions. What do you think is going to happen? And one thing, Greg, I wanted to bring up that I think is very important also is the knowledge that social media platforms have. I think, the big argument that people will make is that, a social media platform is almost like a bulletin board. Like they don't know what's being put out there, and, and they're not aware, and, whatever else. And, and I think that's kind of the thought with the argument in mind that social media platforms don't know what's out there. They absolutely do know. And we have evidence of that. Like, for instance, let me try to think. um okay, how many years ago was this? This was it was in the Wall Street Journal. And there was a whistleblower. Her name was Frances Haugen.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've heard. Have you heard about this
Oh,
already?
she's the one from Facebook.
Yeah, okay. So she was a Facebook product manager, and in 2021, she published internal documents showing that Meta had, and by Meta, Meta is, Facebook, and it's also Instagram, that Meta had researchers who knew and reported to the company that teenage girls were reporting more frequent suicidal thoughts and eating disorders, and that and that social media, Meta specifically, was exacerbating this.
Yeah.
And so that's proof that we have, and not only that, but interestingly, in this day and age, it is so easy to find evidence, because I think people do want to come forward when they're not feeling good about things that they've done, and they want to divulge what they know. So let me tell you, like Sean Parker, Facebook's first president, he said in an interview, and this is verbatim, "God only knows what it's doing to our children's brains."
Yeah.
It's me, it's Mark Zuckerberg, it's all of these people. We understood this consciously, and we did it anyway. And this is Facebook's first president. So this isn't a mystery that we're talking about, like, oh, is this happening? Did they know what was happening? Whatever else. They knew. And and here we are. Now we're going to hold them accountable.
All right. So let's talk about the law in these cases. There have been a bunch of cases that have been filed. When you say MDL and JCCP, there must be enough cases out there that the courts have decided to consolidate them in front of one judge in federal court, and also one judge in the state court in California. Do I have that right?
That's correct. So I believe, the numbers, of course, keep going up as cases get filed. I believe so far we have 200 in the MDL and 200 in the JCCP.
All right. Now, in a lot of the litigation that you've handled, like defective drugs, pharmaceutical kind of stuff, at some point you have the judge invites both attorneys from both sides, and they have science day, and they explain to the judge what they think the science is, to justify the claim, or to say, no, the claim is bogus or whatever. Are you going to have that in this kind of case?
I believe we will. We have not set out any deadlines yet. We haven't gotten there, but that is definitely in the future for this litigation, for both of these litigations,
And
for
you've
all of
referenced
these litigations, really.
and you've referenced some studies that have already been done to support your clients and your position. Give me some names of the studies.
Oh gosh. If you want some names, okay, yeah, give me a second. We're talking about kind of big institutes that do this kind of research, like the National Youth Mental Health Foundation. I think I quoted a study there. And let me think. Who are the other studies from? So the studies that I quote, they're not epidemiological studies. So you don't have like your regular scientists. These are more like clinical studies or articles that have been written in the last 2-3 years that I've given you.
All right. So when you talk about like clinical studies, so a psychologist or a psychiatrist has a patient, and they basically are seeing the connection between what you're talking about, what the social media is doing, and how they are.
Right. Or even surveys. There have been surveys done of teenagers and kind of connecting the dots. So it's not epidemiological, and I haven't really looked into that yet. And I'll tell you why. We just haven't gotten there yet.
Yeah.
But we'll get there.
You're going to get there. All right. So, but the point is that you actually have doctors that have made these diagnoses.
Yeah, absolutely.
And all right, so it sounds like your cases in the MDL and the JCCP are early in the world of litigation. You haven't set these deadlines and stuff like that. And I guess my question really is, what is Mark Zuckerberg and all the other social media, executives saying? What's their position? Are they saying, yes, you're right? Or are they
Yeah.
saying no?
So they're going to say we're not right. I mean, despite the fact that, we have Frances Haugen's publishing of these documents, these internal documents. I think the overall position of all defendants right now is that, they are just a bulletin board and that they cannot control the content. But that is not what we are alleging in these lawsuits. What we're alleging is, but you can control your algorithms, you can control your technology, and you are absolutely aware, like in any products liability lawsuit, if you're aware that there's harm being caused from your product, you can't sit around and do nothing. That's what they're doing. They're sitting around, they're doing nothing. They're saying, oh, we're a bulletin board, whatever. But again, our allegations are centered around these algorithms that are being drafted, created, coded by, the best product developers, engineers ever, with the express intent of hooking minors, period. I mean, that's what we're talking about. So, so knowing this, with, the issue being the algorithms, the technology, and then the lack of meaningful parental control type options with, with these social media platforms, all of those things, create the problem that we have today.
All right. So, and you actually did steal my next question, which is algorithms. I think that most of the public now has heard of the word algorithm and has a somewhat of an idea what an algorithm is. So you're saying that there's tech people out there that are working for these companies that are developing these algorithms, which are designed to essentially do exactly what you're saying. The 14-year-old girl who says, I got to take a couple pounds off. It's like the next week, boom, 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 going to get bombarded by all these ads, right? So it sounds like what you're saying is they are intentionally setting up the platform in a way that people will get bombarded, especially minors, even though they're not supposed to be on it.
So that's exactly right. And the Wall Street Journal actually did an experiment where where they had a bot go on to a social media platform and and click on one thing and then click on it 2 times just to kind of see how good these algorithms were. And I think the results absolutely showed that you click on something more than once or twice, you're going to continue to get it, because that's what these algorithms do. Or sometimes even without clicking, if you pause on an article long enough, guess what? Same kind of thing. So, so I'm definitely not smart enough to explain these algorithms because they are beyond me. But what I do know is that the purpose of these algorithms is to keep kids' attention on whatever it is that they think these kids are inspired, entertained by. And sometimes the things that come across their their iPads, their cell phones, are things that are dangerous or things that are just overall bad for them. And there are no controls there.
Yeah. So my thinking is, and I'm going to predict that in this kind of a case, you can actually take the deposition of the people that were creating these algorithms and ask them exactly what the objective was. You can have your own tech person there. And I would imagine that the social media companies are going to object, protective orders, trade secrets. We can't talk, you can't get this information. Do you anticipate that being one of the big hurdles, or am I off?
You're completely spot on. I think when it comes to that time, yeah, absolutely. We will depose everyone. We will understand these algorithms. I mean, I don't understand them. I think there are people in leadership who do understand them better than I do. Absolutely. And, and there is a plan in place, and these people should get deposed. We want to know, what were you told? And I can guarantee you this, they are being told whatever it takes at any cost, keep people on. This is $100 billion business that we're talking about.
Yeah.
The longer people stay on, the more advertising bucks we get on. And again, the focus of our suit, when we're focusing on minors. So, so the argument isn't, Greg, what you and I are watching and what hooks us to these social media platforms. It's why are you hooking minors?
Yeah.
And and look at the statistics, it's not good for them. Or even look at previous employees, or presidents of your companies that are saying what we're doing is not good, this is not okay.
Yeah. And in terms of like, you talk about the monitoring, and then, hey, you got to do something to stop this kind of nonsense. I'm not a coding guy, but it sounds like maybe artificial intelligence could be utilized to, stem this problematic, behavior, or not behavior, but problematic reality of social media. But again, the money is too big for them to want to even look into that, I would imagine.
Yeah, and I mean, I can tell you a simple thing that they could do, pretty much like today, that would help the problem. So, so one of the things that I talked about was how, minors aren't even supposed to be on social media platforms without parental consent, and then they go on and they can, put in a fake birthday, and that's pretty much it, right? So according to the FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, this has, or this is what has been proposed as ways to kind of help the issue that we're talking about. So proper age verification, according to the FTC, there are certain acceptable methods. The first one is have a form for your parents to sign and return, right? Versus, just entering a birth date. Use of a credit card, or you can connect to trained personnel for video conferencing. And this is again to ensure that it's not a minor, it's actually a grown-up, or or a parent who's giving consent, calling a staffed toll-free number, or even asking knowledge-based questions, verifying via a photo ID, that kind of thing. These are all very small steps that these social media platforms can take today to ensure that parents understand what's happening. So, so that's one way to do it. But that's not even being done.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, driver's license, I mean, it seems like a pretty somewhat of a manageable issue. But obviously I don't think that necessarily solves the entirety of the problem, because 18, 19, 20-year olds, are still, I'm sure they're still getting bombarded. I get bombarded. What do you think I get bombarded by? Hair growth. No, I'm kidding. This is like the best thing that ever happened to me. But no, I mean, I think that, obviously the minors, are probably a more, problematic because of their frontal lobe and everything that you were discussing. But I don't think that it would end the game. I think that just, which, narrow it a little bit in terms of, who they're going after. But like all litigation, all these issues, depression, suicide, they're very complicated, and they have many more. And my opinion is that there's lots of things going on that, in addition to, how they're, getting on social media and getting bullied on social media and all that. I mean, so it sounds like you still have a tough case at the end of the day. Would you agree with me on that? Or what's your thought on that?
Well, what do I think? Okay, I think all cases, especially when you're talking about national litigations against big corporate entities, they're always tough. But sometimes they're tough for all the wrong reasons. In my mind's eye, I feel like, our case is very clear cut. And I don't have any qualms about that. However, I'm very well aware that big corporations in any lawsuit will put up a fight. And that's the part that's tough. It's not what you're trying to argue or what you want to tell the judge and the jury. It's more obstacles that defendants can and will put in front of you so that you can get to the place where you get to tell your story, the story, plaintiff stories.
And I look forward to seeing that unfold. And oftentimes, you'll hear of a drug and you'll be like, wow, I can't believe that drug actually caused that condition. And there's epidemiological studies, there's science, and you're like, okay, I guess it does make sense. And as an attorney, you have the opportunity to represent these people, maybe get the product off the market, but you still really are like completely dependent upon the science to prove your case. In other cases, you need science. The judge is going to force you to have the science, but it kind of makes sense. Like this, to me, is the type of case that I don't think you need to be a rocket scientist to see the connection between all, this, they're making money. This is how they're making money. They don't care, bottom line. And you know what? If these people all are messed up because of them sitting there on their phone all day and night or whatever, that's not our problem. I think people can easily kind of put their mind around that. What do you think of that?
I agree with you. And I kind of want to quote something that, that our Surgeon General said as to what we're talking about now, which is this, children versus big tech is just not a fair fight. You have some of the best designers and product developers in the world who have designed these products to make sure people are maximizing the amount of time they spend on these platforms. If we tell a child, use the force of your willpower to control how much time you're spending, you're putting a child against the world's greatest product designers. And this is from our Surgeon General. And, it ended with technology companies must step up and take responsibility for creating a safe digital environment for children and youth. So, this isn't a sentiment that just plaintiffs' lawyers are echoing. This is something that, that I think we're going to hear more and more of, whether in all levels of government, just because the internet is lawless. We all know that. And, and when it comes to our children, when it comes to minors, I don't think anyone's okay with allowing a product like this to remain lawless with the consequence of kids getting hurt. I don't think anybody's okay with that. And actually, in fact, Biden, our president, mentioned in his 22-23 State of the Union addresses that, quote, we need to hold social media platforms accountable for the national experiment they're conducting on our children for profit. I mean, who else do you need to say this isn't okay for it to, finally get resolved, whether it be in our litigations, whether it be via legislation or both, or even multiple other angles. I mean, the point is something's got to be done about this.
All right, we're going to end the show on that note. Ruth, I thank you for coming on. You'll give us an update in, 3 months, 6 months, something like that. And listen, folks, if you have questions, if your child is, troubled and has been hooked on social media, you give Ruth a call. I'm going to put her information in the show notes so you'll find out how to reach her. And Ruth, I wish you the best of luck. I know this will be a battle. Nothing is guaranteed, but I appreciate you coming on the show and talking to my audience about this.
It's been a pleasure, Greg. Anytime.
All right, folks, that'll do it for this episode of Cut to the Chase.